Hi, everybody. It's Joe Gigrich and Shaylee Modi once again on the Project Ready Podcast. Today's podcast is about taking care of the back office. And, back office, I looked it up just to make sure I was referring to it correctly. But it's all that operational stuff within a built project, right? AEC or O. And by back office, we mean things like how do you handle document control, reporting? Are you downloading data? All this kind of stuff. And for an industry with really, really, really slim margins, I hear about it all the time. We can't invest in technology to improve our processes because we have no money. I would argue very strongly the other way that the one area that the industry would have enormous benefit from would be addressing the back office operational aspect of a project. Yes, there's, most of the project's budget is out there in the field building things, innovating in engineering and architectural design, but it's still a business that needs to be run, and it's a business that has unique needs. There's a Autodesk article we'll reshare, but they have tons of facts and stats and the like. But when you look at it, for one, there's a labor shortage, so you have to use the folks that you have efficiently. 95% of all the data captured in a construction project goes unused. And 36% of construction professionals, I'm just reading at you, cited the reason technology failed was because of a poor fit with current processes and procedures. Right. And when you look at it, there's another stat that I like to quote. $1.6 trillion is lost in the industry every year by deploying things like manual brute force, download, upload, data entry, and the rest of it. And if you look at financial services is all about profit. They do very well at that because they invent money. But look at the way trading floors and other industries handle this. They do it with an extreme efficiency. And when you look at AI coming along, this is yet another an opportunity to really run the place lean, mean, and efficiently. The industry is rightfully fascinated with technology advancements and fiber optic cameras that can go through plumbing systems and drones and GIS. I'm not poo-pooing that. It is the heart and soul of the industry. But I think I think it's healthy for the bottom line to really take care of the back office and make sure that you're operating efficiently. Okay, so that's my intro. I figured I would just kind of factoid throw stuff at you, but it really is the driver and the value, frankly, that we bring to the industry is we address that. We're a software company. We're software developers. We're process experts. We're not construction experts. We're not engineers. But what we are expert in and think that we bring value to our customers in is how can you do this really redundant, really highly risky kind of work efficiently? And how do you remove the risk? And what do I mean by risk? I mean, 52% of rework is caused by poor data and miscommunication. And there's no industry that has more need or opportunity for improved collaboration. And collaboration is not just like, hey, Bob, how was the weekend? Collaboration is on information, it's on data, it's on content. Exacerbating that or making it even more challenging is, my God, do you have a lot of data? There's just a plethora of information that has to be ingested, massaged, worked through, agreed upon, audited, and traced. I said I was going to finish with factoids, but apparently I hit you with a couple more. So let's turn our attention to Shaylee. What are some back office tasks that you find are not only critical to project success, but are kind of necessary and wanting that would help the industry?
I think definitely you mentioned document control to start with, but even before we get there, I think basic project management, how projects are set up, managed, right from managing the project information to all the different tasks and activities that happen in a project, as well as all the different systems that go into working on a project. Just that setting up of the project, we've seen so many times that there's no process around it. It's a very tedious process to get all the systems together and in place. And as you mentioned, the industry is so much focused into okay, if you're working on designs and you need that tool, people just start working on so many different systems. But at a project level, it all needs to come together because that needs to be organized, managed, the data needs to be in one place. So just bringing all of this together, I think, is very important in terms of just the overall management of the project.
Right. There's the project management per se, resource allocation, how you handling all that software, maintaining all that software. How are you creating the workspaces, which will be in multiple systems for the various stakeholders on a project, right? And then there's the security and the administration of that, and bringing that data together. It's always more than just bringing the information together as well. It's bringing it together in a way that you can make sense of it and use it advantageously.
Right. And depending on organizations, we've seen from small to big. Sometimes when the organization is too small, they don't have enough support from IT and such to set all of this up. But if there are huge organizations, then the IT and systems team is busy doing other things. So it's just very hard for the end users like designers, architects, engineers who are busy doing other things to kind of make sure all of these back office operations are also managed, because that is equally important.
And you don't know what to ask for if you, how can I put it? You won't ask for something if you don't know that you can do it and that it's
Hmm.
possible,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And to your point, rightfully, well, these professional folks are focused on their core skill set.
Mhm.
But the other thing too is even in large AEC institutions, I don't have the stat on hand, but it still spends less on these kind of systems and that kind of applied technology than any industry sans agriculture, which is, if you look at innovation as an expense as opposed to innovation, that also tends to really darken that landscape in a negative way. Focusing in a bit as well is look at even the use of M365. This is near and dear to our heart. In your experience, how have you seen companies use M365 as it relates to projects, as it relates to their institution, and what would you say, good or ill?
Yeah, I think with M365, SharePoint is very powerful yet complicated to set up. And that is both a good and bad thing, because we've seen so many times that the way companies set it up is a single site, and then they put their entire file folder structure into a single library. People don't really have an idea on how to segregate the information properly, security trim it. It basically becomes like a Dropbox at that level, which doesn't really help with any of the functionalities that M365 and SharePoint are really useful for.
Right. This is
Uh,
a SKU that they already own the licensing for. And to your point, here's a library with 100 folders. It just doesn't scale. And it's actually worse. I mean, because like Dropbox is at least built for external sharing in large measure. Arguably, sticking everything in one folder, I don't know how you manage the governance on that.
Yeah, it's all over the place. So yeah, definitely the first thing I would say is just setting it up properly. But then even within that, as we are talking about security, the ongoing maintenance is a lot as team members come in and out of projects, external sharing, as you mentioned, all of this is equally important for that seamless collaboration on the project for sure. And any level of automation there would just reduce so much time to manage the project.
So to summarize, on what some common challenges you see out there are data silos and integration, right? And how do you address that? Cybersecurity threats, just the overhead of maintaining, like you said, Shaylee, if you got people coming on and off a project, how you managing that security, how you setting up with the various systems that they use. And there is a resistance to change within the industry, although I have seen a huge and demonstrable thaw in that direction. So let me ask you this then. Can you give me some common examples that we've seen at institutions that you think are just unduly or unnecessarily labor intensive, and how that can be addressed?
Yeah, as we've been talking about M365 and SharePoint, we touched on it a little bit, but yes, setting up a new project, we've seen that it takes days, if not weeks sometimes, to just go through that whole process of setting the project up, making sure the right team members have been invited, the security is set up. If we talk about SharePoint, there are lots of lists and libraries and folders that need to be set up. So we've seen that it could take from days to weeks for large projects, especially for when there's a lot of data. There's just a lot of overhead for the entire team, including IT, to get something set up.
Yeah, and I'm thinking even higher level. So you're design firm, and you have to get documents from the GC out in the field and vice versa, right? So typically what you see is people literally going in, downloading massive zip files, unpacking it, logging it in a spreadsheet, and then putting it back up on their side. So just dealing with content itself, what I refer to as brute force manual labor, that is one glaringly large issue, that one alone. And, if you can synchronize the content, if you can build trust between the systems, all the stuff that we do, you get rid of an enormous amount of overhead. And again, it's risky because you may well be working with the wrong version of a document. Because if it takes you, X amount of time just to download it, because these can be some really beefy packs of information, and then the next day it's up and running, what has happened in the last 24 hours, you really don't know. I think another thing that is you just see a lot is the over reliance on Excel. Like, where do you see Excel used too frequently, if you will, Shaylee?
Especially in terms of the document control workflows. And like if we talk about transmittals, submittals, we've been talking about the manual processes, especially because there are so many different systems. People don't want to kind of collaborate into a single system. So there's a lot of manual effort where you have one internal system, you download everything, you manually enter the entire log in Excel with the list of documents and properties, like a document register, for an example, and then you have to manually upload all of that into another system. All of that is basically tracked manually in Excel for so many different operations like that.
And big chunks of project management. P6, an amazing tool, industry standard, Microsoft project, indispensable. But typically, the start of a project, the closeout of a project, high level milestone tracking, that too, I far too commonly see relegated to a spreadsheet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we just talked to a client who they have P6 and such, but they don't need that level of complicated project management. So they're just using Excel. They open up a file in SharePoint, and then like we're just using that for now to manage all our tasks for the project and the milestones.
Right. And then how does that scale, right? You can't report
Mhm.
against it. You can't see it across other projects. And, one of our great sponsors up north, I think one of their projects they have using our project management system, like over 3,000 tasks.
Mhm.
But those tasks actually relate back to P6. So they have and think just how many tasks are inside P6 at that point, right? So, but they need a distillate view to track that high level milestone. The grim details are what they are, grim details. And in of itself, a bit of a time suck to work through all that data. So, this is a fairly short podcast because I think, folks are aware of what these issues are. But there are ways to approach this, right? Uh, even internally, just to get a handle at the beginning of a project as to what data has to come together, not after the fact, and then trying to find more and more efficient ways to use the products you already own. Everybody tends to use 3 or 4 different platforms for a little piece of this or a little piece of that. Or conversely, they try to overuse a platform that's really not very good at something. So for us, it's best of breed, right? This is something that we think that really will help with efficiency. And then to shamelessly plug what we do, right? We automate all that IT overhead, all that governance and security, and then provide project management and document control that is simple, straight ahead to use, and gives you portfolio and program level reporting. So be it doing homegrown at home, where you're building out provisioning tools, coming up with different ways to ingest information without having to send somebody with a college degree or a master's degree to go do that stuff is really the beginning and the end of where you have to take that journey. And if you don't, everybody talks about AI, and this relates to so many of the podcasts we've had of late. If you don't have a handle on that data structure, if you don't have a way to connect the dots, understand who's worked on what, when, and where, and why, there is nothing that AI can do for you. It will just be a failed attempt, garbage in, garbage out. So anyway, we really do think we address this, and we see other companies addressing it even without us. I hate to say, but it is something that I really think the industry warrants taking a heavy look at. Is that if you have slim margins, if you're operating at 5% and you're burning 20% of your staff's time, there's your money, and that's where I think it lives. Ultimately, there's more than the field. Ultimately, there's more than design, and there's a lot of really great shiny stuff out there, but the good old how you get it done efficiently is really where you're going to be able to drive those margins, efficiency, reduce rework, litigation, all those necessary, if not terribly sexy things about a project. That really is where you can realize an incredible amount of improvement.